Hold on, when did Songs for Clem come out before you were here?
Yeah, I think it did.
What made you want to put it out? The little dad record.
You know, the little dad record.
You know what I mean?
I think because I didn't have a
Not
record
that your dad's
label.
not that your dad's little.
He's wee.
How are you?
I'm well, thanks, Tom.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you too.
Now let's do it. We were talking about it before we started the interview. I wanted to ask you about the train ride you took.
Absolutely. Yes, just got my bearings back on solid ground after taking the train from Toronto to Vancouver for the Junos and then back from Vancouver to Toronto.
How long does that take?
It's a 4-night, 5-day adventure, a land cruise, as people call it. We met all these people who are super train, buffs. And so folks from all over, we met lots of Americans, lots of Canadians from all over, who just had it on their list, that they really wanted to take this 1954, the Canadian. And so we hopped aboard, my sweetheart and I, and we had a really, really lovely trip.
What did you notice that maybe you saw taking the train across that maybe you haven't seen from crisscrossing in a van as many times as you have?
Yeah, it's a little different. It was cool to be going out from Vancouver this way, on our return trip to see the Fraser River and the canyons and Hell's Gate, which is the tightest kind of pinch point of the river. So beautiful scenery because it depends what time of night or day that you're going through. So we missed a lot of the Rockies on the way out there, but on the way home we saw them. We saw a lot of snow-covered prairies. I saw a wolf in northern Ontario. I noticed a gentleman looking out the window quickly, and I looked, and there was a big furry wolf on the edge of the woods, really snow-covered up in northern Ontario. No cell reception. You're back in time. Part. It was cool. Yeah.
I was going to say, did you love it?
I loved it. I love sitting around.
That's why you're here, I figured.
Some people get antsy, but we had to wait a lot because the CN trains have priority. So we would sit and wait while big freighters would go by us and stuff. But I just enjoyed the looking out the window, played a little guitar, read some stuff.
Did you get any, hey, Sarah Harmer, sing us a song? Did you do any of that?
I did finally feel like I earned my keep a little bit on the trip back. I played just like a half-hour set in the park car, which is the last car on the train. Beautiful, all windows, and people just squeezed in. I played Four Strong Winds and whatever kind of prairie tunes I could think of.
Congrats on the key to the city of Burlington.
Thank you.
Is it a physical key?
Well, I'm getting it tonight.
Oh.
So I don't know. And I don't know how many doors it will open for me.
Literally and figuratively. Meaningful to you to get that?
Really nice. I mean, the city of Burlington has been great. We've been working for 20 years to protect Mount Nemo and really safeguard all the headwaters and from a big industrial proposal. So the city has been a big partner in that. Like the mayor, Meade Ward, and council have they understand that we're making decisions for like long term, like the Niagara Escarpment is 440 million year old rock. It's been there a long, long time. And we don't want on our watch to have it get, hollowed out any more than it already has. So no, it means a lot to be recognized by the city, but I feel like I'm sharing it with the council as well.
Burlington proper, is that where you're from? Like would your address growing up have said Burlington?
Yeah. It was up on the escarpment, so North Burlington, but it would say Burlington. Yep.
Farm, right?
Yep. Grew up on a farm.
About much time outdoors?
All the time outdoors.
Really?
Yep. I was the youngest kid, so no one really wanted to hang out with me. So it was like me and my dog tromping around.
So when did the music thing start for you?
Probably church.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
My parents, United Church, they're very much community people. So they dragged us out of bed Sunday mornings to go to church. And so we sang in the choir. My mom and dad would have a carol sing every Christmas. So yeah, we got into singing real early. My dad has a beautiful voice, and his sisters, my aunts, were all in the Sweet Adeline's choir and, stuff like that.
Was there, when did you start playing guitar? What was the first song for that?
That was a Neil Young song.
What one?
After the Gold Rush. I was lying in a burr, and it was
a piano song. You figured you learned on guitar.
I learned it on guitar. I didn't even know it was a piano song. I played it at high school Remembrance Day service. I mean, that was a little while after I learned it, hopefully, unless it was excruciating for everybody. But yeah, that was probably the first one. You know, you learn 3 chords and you can play a bunch of Neil Young tunes.
Did you have someone say to you, "Geez, Harry, you have a lovely voice. I think you should try singing"?
At that time, I had been in school musicals. So I was in like Hello Dolly and Oliver and stuff. So I hammed it up. I was a bit of a ham back in the day.
Was there anything in the back of your mind that like, hey, it'd be nice to do this? Might be nice.
Yeah, you know what? I went and saw Anne Murray. That was the first proper concert I saw in Hamilton.
Yeah.
And my mom took me, and I remember talking to my brother afterwards, and he said, you know, you should really play guitar. That's if you want to be a singer, songwriter, or whatever, you should learn guitar. So I got a guitar when I was 17.
And how were the songs? Did the songs come quickly after that, your own?
I played in a band called the Saddletramps. I wrote a few tunes.
Yeah.
You know, kind of like heart-wrenching romance stuff early on.
But
Yeah.
no, like, 16, 17-year-old, trying to get it out, early Sarah Harmer songs that you don't care for.
You know, try to get it out like as a solo
No,
career.
no,
You
get it
just
out,
mean-
get out of your heart, like.
Yeah, no, I did. I wrote a few that we sang with the Saddletramps. I mean, I wrote the song that I still play, Don't Get Your Back Up. I wrote that, I think, when I was 18.
No way.
Yeah, it's all been downhill from there.
16 is when the story I read is that you were 16 and in Kingston, and then the Hip were playing around then. But that was before they became the biggest band in the country, right?
Yeah. My sister Mary and Barb went to Queens at the time and knew the band. They were friends with the Hip. And so, yeah, one summer in around Southern Ontario when the Hip was touring small clubs, we would go. I was 16 and still able to get in, under the cloak of someone's. So I would get in to saw them a bunch of different venues around like Cottage Country. And
Can you tell me anything? Like I find
oh,
that.
hell yeah.
Tell me.
I remember seeing him at the John in McMaster in Hamilton. And I remember, Gord, or I think it was Paul or Gord, ushering me back. There weren't too many people in the club, and they brought me back into the green room, like in the band room. And I just remember thinking it was the coolest thing. I remember Gord saying to me, like, "You're just a boots and dungarees girl, aren't you?" I was like, yeah. I'm thinking to myself, I don't know what dungarees are. But no, I admired those guys. I was definitely just enamored to be so close up to sweaty rock and roll.
I read getting ready for this. I read an interview where Gord was talking about you in the early days, right when you were starting out solo, and he said he met you when you were a teenager, and that he had nothing to teach you, yet you were a quick study.
Oh, I listened to stuff that I recorded just on like my Ghetto Blaster or whatever 4-track at the time, and I'm like, oh yeah, I can hear like Tracy Chapman, and I can hear Gord Downie. I can hear people that I was listening to a lot with just how I was singing.
That's where I saw you first, was opening for the Hip in St. John's.
Oh yeah, I remember that show at Mile 1.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
I think my first show.
Holy smokes! Yeah,
Yeah.
I got up and sang "We Kings," I think, that night with them. Oh yeah, that was fun. I'm glad I remember that.
I'll never forget it.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the Saddletramps earlier. You're in grade 12. You meet a musician at Sunrise Records.
That's right. Yeah, in the Burlington Mall, Andy Lindsay.
And he asks you if you want to join his band.
Yep.
What made you say yes?
I had never been asked if I wanted to join anybody else's band. They had been a band. They'd been a band for a bunch of years. The guys in the Saddletramps, and they rehearsed in Toronto. And so I was just like, yeah, for sure. Andy picked me up, and we'd drive from Burlington into Toronto. And yeah, it was definitely like country rock. It was a lot. They had all gone to college together, so they all knew a lot of the same music. So it was definitely, I was playing tambourine and singing back up and getting used to standing next to like 2 very cranked Vox amps, and got a good bruise on my thigh from playing tambourine and just going for it. So yeah.
The reason I asked why did you want to say yes, because I remember watching you in the Juno when you won the Juno for the Humanitarian Award, which we'll talk about in a second. One of the first things you said was, I always wanted to be a member of the band. I always wanted to be in the van with the band.
Yeah.
I guess I was just curious about what that was.
I mean, I think that could have been too, seeing the Hip, in a shitty old van
Go
driving
on.
around.
I think once you win the Humanitarian Award, you can do whatever
I
you
can
want.
swear.
Yeah, you're all right.
So I think I never really wanted to be a solo. I was like, Sarah Harmer, like that just doesn't roll off the tongue. And I just wanted to be in a gang, with a band. So Weeping Tile, when I started Weeping Tile in college, that was kind of that was me kind of us doing that and crossing the country and paying ourselves a couple $100 a week to make it happen.
Yeah, Weeping Tile was shortly after Saddletramps.
Yeah.
Kind of your band though, right?
Yeah.
What were you looking for when you kind of created that band?
I loved the Breeders. I loved garage rock. I just wanted some simple I don't know. I just wanted to go out there and kind of bash it out. I didn't really it wasn't too nuanced. It was just fun.
How'd you find it?
Stamina is necessary. You got to kind of be able to roll with it and not get too precious about how the monitor sounds. I remember Ian Blurton from Change of Heart kind of giving me a good earful. Well, not a good earful, but just kind of rolling his eyes, saying like, you expected to hear yourself out of the monitors, like toughen up.
Yeah.
I like the kind of macho side of it. Admittedly, I kind of like the tough side of touring.
Yeah, come on, buck up.
Yeah.
Hey, I know you slept 4 hours. I don't care.
We got to drive 8.
We got to drive 8 because you're touring in Canada.
Yeah.
I remember my wife Meg. She told me she had just finished a gig in Halifax, and she said, "If I don't stop driving, I can make sound check in Ottawa."
Yeah.
It's glamorous. I didn't know that you had Basement Apartment on the cassette with Weeping Tile. I know Basement Apartment from You Were Here, which we'll talk about in a second. But you put that out with Weeping Tile in 1994.
Was it 94? Yeah.
What do you remember about writing Basement Apartment?
I was listening to Buffalo Tom. I remember that band, and I just really loved their music. And I just was sitting in a cafe in Kingston, and I just was kind of writing about a situation I had experienced, I guess. So I do remember kind of putting that together, and I do remember Buffalo Tom being sort of a musical inspiration.
Was it a real basement apartment that you had lived in?
Yeah, my friend lived in it.
I still love that song. I listened to it the other day.
Thanks.
In 1996, you put out Cold Snap with Weeping Tile, which features, if I may say so, my favorite Sarah Harmer song. Can you have it there?
She calls early in the morning about money that I might have spent. It's a classic case of I don't know where it went.
I'll say that that's not only my favorite, but I was playing it in my office when I was getting ready for this interview, and Cora, our producer, walked in and said, "Hey, that's my favorite Sarah Harmer song."
That is so cool.
2 of us have that.
In the Road.
I love In the Road. Would you mind telling me about writing that song?
Not at all. I wrote that one when I was in university, and my mom had loaned me some money. And, it was kind of a pastiche of things. It wasn't just about one particular experience. It was just a bit of a put together from that time to be out in the road. I do also, I am going to be admitting the chord progression of that song. I've never admitted this before, but whatever. Tom Waits, Rosie.
Oh.
Sitting on the windowsill, blowing my horn. I did put those together, not consciously, I think, at the time, but afterwards I was like, oh, here's the walk down. Oh, yeah, because I had learned how to play a
G, F sharp, E minor,
Tom Waits tune.
C.
Yeah.
Beautiful song, Sarah.
Thank you.
Do you ever do it?
No, I don't. I forgot about that one. I'm gonna put that in there.
I'll take a little cut.
Resurrected by Tom.
Yeah, I think that's 10%. It seems to me like, and I have sort of an affection for local music scenes because I worry about them, to be honest. And I was so lucky that when I was growing up in St. John's, I could go out every night to hear a band, and the band was a band from my town, and everybody at my town was at the show. And if I didn't want to go to that one, I had 5 other I could go to that night. And I was lucky enough to feel like I was part of a scene. And not to be old man grump, I'm seeing it start to disappear. I'd love to hear a little bit about the Kingston scene at that time.
Yeah, the Kingston scene, same. I mean, in the 90s especially, there were bands like the Hellbillies, the Inbreds, 13 Engines played through sometimes, the Mugworts, Weeping Tile. Like, there were lots and lots of bands. Our friend Grant, the drummer for 13 Engines, opened up a studio called the Funhouse in the old Alcan factory. So everybody was like, all right, we get to go and record our cassette or whatever, and there was a hub, and there were, you know, there were not a ton of clubs. There's a lot of pubs, but no, there was live shows a lot, and I can't say that have my finger on the pulse of what's going on these days that much. But Kingston, similarly, I grew up on a farm, so I really wanted to move to Kingston because I had a few sisters that went to school at Queens before me, and I knew that there was this kind of old school focused downtown where people, you know, went to see shows, and there was just that community.
It's a beautiful thing.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and,
it is.
And Kingston seems I sort of idealize it a little bit sometimes in my mind when I think about the scene back then.
Yeah.
I'm going to run by my understanding of what happens after that and my sort of movie version of it. And you tell me if I'm right and ideally elaborate if I'm right or wrong. Around that time is when you make the Songs for Clem record, which is a record that you made as a gift to your dad. Christmas birthday?
Oh, yep, Christmas.
Christmas. Old country songs, old, like Shine on Harvest Moon was on that, like this old kind of Ruth Etting, ragtimey song.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only Ruth Etting reference on Q today. Trouble in the Fields is on that. That ends up coming out. You end up putting that out. And that's sort of the marker of, okay, well, there's going to be a Sarah Harmer solo artist based on the reception to that.
I think so. Yeah, we made that at my house on the back porch for the most part. And it was done just in a couple days. And it was kind of after Weeping Tile had just kind of broken up. I can't remember. I don't think I had started working on You Were Here yet. Have to go back into the diaries on that one. But yeah, it was just a one-off because it was so freeing, though, because I didn't think that it was going to necessarily be heard by anybody outside of my family, that we just kind of made decisions quickly and just went for it and weren't too concerned about anything. And it just captured a really nice couple days of outdoors on the porch.
You can hear the crickets on it,
You can hear the crickets, you can hear the rain. And so, yeah, and then I made... And then I had enough songs of my own to make a solo record. I started in the fall of '99.
Hold on, when did Songs for Clem come out before You Were Here?
Yeah, I think it did.
What made you want to put it out? The Little Dad record.
You know, the Little Dad record.
You know what I mean?
I think because I didn't have a
not
record label.
Not that your dad's little.
He's wee.
The Wee Dad record.
I think I didn't have a record label. I was kind of freed of having a band and that kind of responsibility. My sister Barb didn't have a job at the time, and we're like, hey, why don't you distribute this album? Maybe you could be like the one woman, distributing center for the, just I think I just kind of got a taste of just the freedom of a cottage industry, something small. And because we had somehow, oh man, my memory's poor on this. It was 99, 2000. So it was a while back. But I think I just wanted to, I have always liked hand packaging. I still package up my merch and send it off. Like it's tedious sometimes, but I actually just like the small scale stuff. So I liked putting out that record solo. I went and learned how to do Photoshop at the local laundry shop / computer station in Kingston. The guy showed me how to make a little ad. I put an ad in the local little paper. And so it was just kind of right from the ground up, and then made You Were Here, and then kind of put it out independently too. And then Alan Reed, who was the A&R guy at Universal,
now the head of Caris and Junos and all that. Yeah,
he
Muckety Muck, I call him.
Muckety Muck. He bought a copy from me off the stage at the Horseshoe when I had just pressed a couple hundred copies of You Were Here. And then he listened to it and called me up, called my manager up, and said, I want to sign Sarah.
Up until now, I've been operating under the assumption in this conversation of even you said Sarah Harmer, that's not a solo artist. I wanted to be a member of a band. How was the decision to become a solo artist?
I do have to give credit to my brother. I had done a little show, a solo show at the Black Sheep Inn in Wakefield.
Lovely venue.
And CBC, lovely broadcaster, had recorded it for an Ontario live show, and my brother heard it on the radio. And he came home for Christmas and said, hey, I think you sound better in this than I've heard anything else you've done. I think you should go solo. I can hear what you're singing. It's like whatever it was. And it just was one of those things where just someone close to you just kind of tells you the obvious, and I was like, okay. It's sometimes, you need direction. You need people to have ideas and steer you in direction. I remember just that sit down with him was the thing that made me think, okay, I'm going to do something solo.
I mean, it did very well. You dropped that record off to Alan Reed off the stage of the Horseshoe. Next thing you know, really kind of mainstream popularity. Shout outs from Time Magazine, Rolling Stone. You played Letterman. I want to start with the sort of commercial success of it first. The album eventually went platinum. Music videos, it must have been a whirlwind.
It was, yeah. I kind of got exhaustion.
When you look back at it, like in the eye of the hurricane of that time, what do you remember?
It was really, really thrilling. I really wanted people to hear it. So, and yeah, Rounder Records was really, they had just opened up kind of a wing of their record label that was more of a pop wing. So they got really behind it, and it was thrilling. It was really thrilling to do all that. It was exhausting. I got to a point where I was like, I can't move my eyeballs. They hurt too much. Like I was.
You were torn a lot?
Clinically exhausted.
Torn.
Touring a lot. Just because, it's like that when you go out and you tour and then you get more opportunities and you get asked back and then you're like, oh, but we're just building it and I can't say no to that. And then it's like, what's physically possible? At some points you have to kind of take a break.
Did you, was there a point where you went like, all right, I got to stop?
Yeah.
Was that after you were here, or was that before the next record?
It was before the next record.
Right.
Yeah, but it's always hard for me to make records. So I remember having a hard time making the follow-up album. Just putting the blinders on and doing it.
Plus, I bet you were feeling a bit of something like that first record, which you had made not to be a commercial success, had become a commercial success, and then you got to go in and
follow up,
consciously or unconsciously replicate it.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember my friend saying, don't worry, you just got to do one more and then you can just totally check out. Like, again, I like sitting around. So I did make a follow-up record and toured that one as well. But yeah, I've made records here and there.
The reason I say that that's the commercial success is because I think it goes without saying to a lot of Canadians, like me, like folks I work with, like a lot of people listening to this, especially on the lovely broadcaster, these songs mean something to them. And the moments they associate with these songs are strong memories. We were talking about, I remember listening to Trouble in the Fields while my friend we were boys in grade 10, and he said, I actually cried listening to that. I remember being in band camp, and everyone being excited that there was clarinet on around this corner because we felt like we were in a little bit. I remember learning how to play In the Road to try and figure out how to play guitar. I've been talking about you knowing that I'm talking, and everyone doesn't just say I love Lodestar or I love Oleander. My sister used to play Oleander. Everyone seems to have a memory associated with these songs. Did you have a sense that your songs were meaningful to people?
That is so cool. No, I don't.
Did you?
I don't think I did. I mean, I don't think so. You can't really know where they're going to go, right? I know how I have felt and how, Trouble in the Fields, Nancy Griffith's song, I didn't write that one.
Yeah,
but how I have a place in my mind that I go to from a mixed tape when that was on. So I know that it's super powerful. Music is crazy. And I'm really glad that I'm honored so much that the songs can travel like that, become part of other people's lives.
One thing that comes up over and over again in the songs, and I mentioned Lodestar and I mentioned Oleander, we were talking about the hideout, we were talking about there's no shortage of natural imagery in your songs. And this is sort of my pivot question to talking about your relationship with the natural world. Has that always been an easy impulse for songwriting?
I guess so. I haven't really set out to particularly write about anything. I mean, right now I am because I'm trying to write some new songs. I'm like, what the hell am I writing these about? But I have spent a lot of time, and I love spending a lot of time outdoors, and I just find that the living world is more interesting to me sometimes than just the human world. And so but I mean, I'm always usually relating the nature, alongside human relationships and personal feelings and emotions and stuff too. So I guess so. I guess it just comes out, but it doesn't feel too intentional.
Yeah, I never listened to Oleander and only thought it was about a flower,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's with songs. They take on their own meaning. That Oleander, I felt like I was writing a song that had been written a million times. Like the chord progression is so country. It's just such a deep groove of kind of, and it's so simple. But it's just a couple little twists that give it its own place.
In 2005, you founded an organization called Pearl, P-E-R-L, Protecting Escarpment Rural Land, which, as you mentioned earlier, campaigned to protect Mount Nemo in the Niagara Escarpment in Ontario from becoming an open pit limestone quarry. And I want to start by saying I understand you got into this line of work through your mom. Is that right?
Yeah, my mom is definitely a people person and a community person. And so when she found out that this big quarry proposal, they wanted to expand into all these fields and forests near where we grew up, she got on the call with me, and we met. Like I sat around the kitchen table with my mom and a few neighbors, and we made a little flyer, and we drove around and stuffed it into mailbox, and had our first meeting at the Lowville Church in late 2004, and then we started an organization called Pearl. Yeah, and it's all volunteer, neighbors, community members, people who didn't know how land use decisions were made. It's very confusing, many levels of government. You want to do a massive industrial operation in the middle of United Nations World Biosphere Reserve. Like the escarpment is part of a UNESCO World Biosphere Reserve. It's headwaters. It's got incredible biodiversity. And so we had to figure out, how do these decisions get made? What levels of government get to decide? What can we do as people that live up here?
Tell me more about what makes the escarpment, the Niagara Escarpment, special.
It is 400 million year old rock that has been worn down by water, and it's full of caves and conduits and fissures. And it's a ridge, it's a very narrow ridge running from Queenston Heights, so Niagara Falls, 700 and something kilometers up through to Tobermory, up the Bruce Peninsula, and then carries on through Manitoulin, I believe, and then over through Wisconsin, kind of peters out north of Chicago. Like, it's a big ancient spine landscape, and it sits up above the landscape at the height of the revolving restaurant CN Tower. So it's a huge look. Yeah, wow. It's a big lookout. So when you're on Mount Nemo looking east, you can see the skyline of Toronto. You can see the CN Tower. You're looking out over farm fields. There are turkey vultures flying overhead. There are 900 or 1,200-year-old white cedar trees, like bonsai'd clinging to the cliff face. There are so many of Ontario's rare and endangered species because it was typically hard to develop over the last few centuries. So it's got all these pockets of wetlands and forests that are very spiritual, very, very special.
Spiritual?
Yeah, I mean, walk into a ancient grove of white cedars, and with the limestone rock just, underfoot, moss, lichen, quiet. You're up in the, on the top of this outlier. It is a church, a natural kind of space of serenity, I think. And so many people use it. The Bruce Trail is the oldest footpath in Canada, I believe. And so many people walk the Bruce Trail and go to the conservation areas along the Niagara Escarpment. So it's really important, both for humans' physical health, because, you don't get healthy human communities without healthy landscapes. And it's also really important for people's mental health.
I didn't know about the escarpment until I listened to your record with this song on it. Do you have it?
If they blow a hole in the backbone, the one that runs across the muscles of the land, well, we might get a load of stone for the road, but I don't know how much longer we can stand.
That's my guest, Sarah Harmer, who received the Humanitarian Award at the 2025 Juno Awards. I do find that song interesting because I hadn't heard a lot, and I want to say none, but I'm worried I get it wrong, a lot of pointed environmental protest advocacy songs out of you at that point. So At what point did you realize I could use my literal voice and my songwriting for advocacy?
Yeah, I wanted to write a song. This one I did set out to think, how do I, in a nutshell, kind of tell about what I know about what's going on up here? Excuse me. So I did set out particularly to tell the story of the risks, particularly of gravel mining in Ontario. It's, the Auditor General came out last year describing how, unfortunately, there's a lack of regulation and a lack of enforcement of regulation in the industry. And we'd been experiencing that in our community, but then also in the last 10 years or so, meeting so many other community groups around the province who are facing the same kind of David Goliath situations. So yeah, Escarpment Blues, I did set out to particularly write the tale, and took a few liberties, tried to get the word aquifer to seem somewhat poetic. I don't know if it was successful.
What's the hardest thing you've been up against?
Well, as far as on this advocacy, like environmental stuff, I think maybe the hardest thing is people thinking it's a done deal. When you've got transnational corporations in there really lobbying to get the Endangered Species Act, degraded, creating loopholes in the Endangered Species Act in Ontario, and you've got, a lot of money working to commodify a common landscape. A lot of people can be like, "Oof, it's a done deal."
It's
like,
Goliath, buddy.
look at our provincial government, whatever. And so to find those chinks in the armor of those arguments and of those well-funded campaigns to industrialize places, I find that's the first big challenge. But then once you get and you start to raise money, hire experts, start to also mount a team to investigate what this proposal is all about, you start to see actually that it is not as airtight, and there are a lot of weak spots that you can get into and try to share and get the word out about. I think I'm a bad promoter. I'm not very good at promoting things or just communications. So that's the hardest part for me. There's a lot I could be writing about and letting other people know about, but anyways, that's just where I tend to like the nitty gritty. I love reading reports and getting in there and
You like the boring work?
I do. Yeah, I really do like the grind of it.
Why? What do you like about it?
It's satisfying when you can. I just love the details, and when you can find, a great evidence to show. We're in the middle of a hearing right now, Tom. We've been in the middle for like a month now, an Ontario Land Tribunal hearing.
Let me just stop you there. So you're right, and I wanted to mention this. You've had some wins. In 2012, the application to develop Mount Nemo into a quarry was denied. I remember that. It was seen as a big win. The fight is still ongoing today, so catch me up there. 2019,
so 5 years later, the company came back, said we're going to try again, and we're going to even go into a bigger area, like a similar area that they tried and lost on last time. They've shaved that area down a little bit, but then they're going into a whole other green field, green space. So they're trying again, and unfortunately, I think, I hope that they're going to also find the same outcome, which is it's going to be rejected by the province. We don't know that right now. We're in the middle of a Ontario Land Tribunal hearing, which goes, Monday to Thursday every day. It's bringing experts and cross-examining and really trying to, the companies making their case for why they should be able to transform all these wetlands and woodlands and fields into a big mine. And then the city of Burlington, the region of Halton, and our community groups are on the other side saying, nope, not a good idea.
I have one question about that and sort of two non-questions about it. The question is, what keeps you from being cynical about it? It's work. I don't mean that in a "why are you so great, Sarah" way. I mean that in a way that this stuff breeds cynicism, understandably, after you lose so many times, after you see the massive amount of money you're up against.
Yeah, well, because we win sometimes too,
yeah.
And because you again spend a lot of time in the weeds and learn. This proposal is to do some very, very technically sophisticated stuff, and yet they can't show that they are able to do that, and so it's a soap opera. You get hooked. You get hooked on the most minute stuff. Like I have a wonderful partner, and he's very encouraging. But I'm sure sometimes to him, he's like, wow, those guys are just reveling in like the most mundane, like small increment of progress. But you get into it. And I think it's like they say, action is the antidote to despair or, feeling at a loss as to what you can do. Is like when you at least participate and you get that ball rolling, it starts to take on a life.
Talk to me about accepting this Humanitarian Award at the Junos. I know you already have a couple of music Junos under your belt. How did it feel to be recognized for this work?
It felt very, very nice. I mean, people like Bruce Coburn and Susan Gluckart and, The Hip, like there's been, I'm very happy to be in the company of people who have put their music to work outside of just, making records and touring. And to be able to hang out with David Suzuki was a total thrill.
He presented the award.
He presented the award, and we had a great hang that night. From the drive over to the dropping him off at home at the end of the night.
He's a wild guy, man. I really like him.
He is so great.
Yeah.
He is 89. He was like, crawling over the back benches of the truck that we were in, like just very, very wise, but also just a real down to earth person. So that was a thrill.
Has he given you any advice over the years?
We talk shop for sure. It's frustrating even sometimes to see these things that he talked about. You work for years to try to stop a mega dam somewhere or whatever it is, and then situation changes, financial situations change, and Site C gets approved, or whatever it is in BC. Like there's ups and downs. I mean, yeah. So we just shot the breeze about the details.
Thank you, Sarah.
The details about what we were both working on.
Can I tell you the best piece of advice? The best thing he said to me?
Yes.
I interviewed him when I was a young buck doing the show. I really feel like my eyes didn't fully open on like how to do the show for years. But early on when I talked to him, I remember he said to me, I notice you keep on referring to nature as outside, the environment is outside, but really it's everything. It's all around you all the time. When you talk about environmentalism and saving the environment, it's not outside, it's everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We are nature. We
Yeah.
are animals.
Yeah.
Air is everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good tip.
Yeah, that's a profound, solid tips from David Suzuki.
It was great after the Junos to go backstage and talk to media and to be doing that with him. And he was very humble. He's like, I didn't win an award. You should be up there. But I'm like, no, join me. And he has so much deep, experience of decades to draw on and to talk about the present, and here we are in this Canadian moment with climate change, with all these issues that we need our elders.
When you're on the train back from the Junos, after getting this award, I would find it hard to believe that there wouldn't be any part of you that wouldn't be a little bit reflective in that moment. Can I ask something that you might have been reflecting on the way back?
The privilege of living in a peaceful country, living during a peaceful time, being, able to, share music and just live with that with human rights and security. I did feel like I've taken it for granted, and I know that now with what's going on in the States, we're more vulnerable than we know. And so to really try to shore up our sense of community and looking out for each other and like what our sense of Canadian identity and I don't know, those kinds of things were definitely going through my mind as I was traveling across the country.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks so much for having me, Tom.
Congratulations again.
Thank you.
I was so happy to see you get the award.
Thank you.